Welcome to the Lose Weight, Live Life podcast. If you're a female professional or entrepreneur who would do anything to lose weight, yet finds it impossible to stick to a diet, to eat less, or just what you think you should, this podcast is for you. I am your host, certified life and weight coach, Clair MACKENZIE. Listen in to learn how to stop overeating, lose weight for the last time, and create a relationship with food and yourself that you love, all without diet deprivation and self-sabotage. Hi everyone, and a very warm welcome to podcast episode number 72. This week I have been preparing to teach Lose Weight, Live Life Academy members about the process of learning from when we overeat, when we eat differently to how we intended, or just when we eat in such a way that is not aligned with having the relationship with food that we want and or our weight loss goals. You'll no doubt know what I mean. It's about those occasions when we eat or drink things we later regret, or we tell ourselves we shouldn't. Now, when we're dieting, we think that eating in this way is the equivalent of failing or messing up. But, and I said this before and I'll say it again, when you're figuring out what the relationship with food that you want to be, the weight you want to be, looks like for you, overeating, treat eating, self-sabotage eating, even binge eating is very useful in helping you learn what strategies you're going to want to put in place to create that for yourself. Overeating, treat eating, self-sabotage eating, and binging do not need to take you a step back from achieving what you ultimately want. They can also take you forward. The overeating opportunities can be the equivalent of you discovering the hidden doorway in a video game, the doorway that you need to go through to get to the next level. And so today on the podcast, whilst I'm not going to be taking you through the process of how to do all of this step by step, I am going to be talking to you about some key things to be considering so that you too can turn your overeating into an opportunity to help you move forward instead of holding you back. And there are 5 things I wanted to highlight. Number 1 is about not using your overeating against yourself. Number 2 is making sense of your overeating. Number 3 is deciding what you've learned from what you've made sense of. Number 4 is deciding how you will use what you learned to help you. And number 5 is not letting your primal brain use overeating opportunities as a reason to overeat. Okay, so first, not using your overeating against yourself. So I'm going to use the general term overeating here, but it could apply to any type of unplanned eating, emotional eating, binging or overdrinking, or off-diet eating if you're dieting, or any other eating that you have a negative thought or feeling about, or that any other eating that takes you away from creating the relationship with food and yourself that you want. You see, so often when we do any of these types of eating, we make it mean that we're wrong in some way, and we attach a lot of critical emotion to it that is usually directed against ourselves. It could be shame, it could be self-pity, it could be feeling frustrated or disappointed with ourselves. We might tell ourselves we have no willpower, that we've messed up again, that we've failed again, that we've got no self-discipline. All the stories. And none of this is helpful or useful. And in fact, all of these thoughts and feelings are not only not helpful, but they're making it more difficult for you to go right back to eating the way that maybe you want to, because you're going to want to numb all the frustration or disappointment and shame by doing something that is often likely to include eating. And so the first thing is not to get into this shame spiral, to not use overeating against yourself. And you do that by learning to shift your mindset, perspective and thinking to help yourself feel better. And that's exactly the work we do in the Lose Weight, Live Life Academy. Okay, then number 2 is making sense of it. Even before you start to make sense of it, you need to be aware of it. And if you're someone for whom overeating is normal and you're doing it multiple times a day, which again is totally normal, then you may not even be aware of it. And your clue that it's happening is to notice how you're thinking or feeling. And some of you may not be aware of how you're feeling, but you may notice incessant negative self-talk. And others of you may not be aware of the self-talk. Maybe you notice you're feeling pretty rubbish. You're noticing some negative emotion. And if you sort of know that you might be doing this, but you're not aware, then I invite you to study yourself a little bit more to increase that self-awareness. But anyway, once you're aware of what you're going to want to make sense of as best you can, when you're looking to make sense of something, we're always looking for 3 things: the trigger or the situation, the thought and the feeling. And uncovering those, again, is a process that's easier as you practice. Sometimes it all feels very habitual. There is no trigger, no thinking, no emotion. And that happens when it's been a behaviour pattern that you've repeated so many times, it's been delegated to your lower consciousness. But again, it's possible to figure out what's going on when you start looking, when you start tracing back when the habit started. Number 3 is deciding what you learned. What did you learn about yourself when you started noticing what was going on for you that led to you overeating? So let's look at an example. Getting in from work and grabbing food to pick from the fridge or cupboard whilst thinking about what to prepare for dinner. Your trigger is simply walking through the door into a house after spending a day at work. Your thought is probably, I'm hungry, and your feeling is maybe just the urge to eat something. Now, if this is a pattern you've repeated every day for years, you're not going to be noticing what you're thinking. But at some point, you would have got in from work and thought, I'm hungry. I want something. I deserve a treat. It could be any of those. And you eat and you feel a little better. So many times when we tell ourselves we're hungry, it has nothing to do with physical hunger. It's about wanting or needing something. It could be the physical nourishment of food, but it could also be a need for emotional nourishment, a reward, a treat, a comfort, or a moment of peace, whilst you maybe prepare yourself for the onslaught of making dinner. So number 4, having noticed what we're doing, we have an opportunity to be curious about what it is we're needing or wanting. And then we can figure out how to give ourselves that in a different way. So by observing your after work, before tea, fridge raids, you might discover that you are physically hungry, and so you want to have a more nourishing lunch, or you want to take a snack to work. Or you might discover you're not physically hungry at all, and you're tired or drained or need a break or need some validation and recognition of what you've done to get through your day. And if that's the case, then you can look at ways to either give yourself what you need or set up your day differently so that you can replenish yourself before you become depleted. And lastly, number 5, I want to say a few words about using the overeating opportunities to self-sabotage. You see, our primal brain can be clever, and as soon as we tell ourselves it's okay to overeat because it's going to help us figure out our relationship with food, our primal brain wants to tell us to use overeating for that very reason, so that it can be a lesson. And of course, it doesn't work like that, because we would be creating a brand new reason to be overeating, and so doing that is not going to help us understand anything about our previous or existing overeating patterns. So if you catch yourself thinking or doing that, and as you become better at observing your thoughts and feelings, it's going to become easier to catch yourself. Allow yourself to just stop. Congratulate yourself on catching it and ask yourself what it is you want. If you get a childish response from your primal brain, then take the time to be curious to understand it. And then you can give yourself what you truly want. Okay, so that's what I wanted to cover on the podcast today. The 5 things I wanted to highlight are noticing that it's not about using your overeating against yourself. So learning how to step out of that spiral that often looks like shame. Number 2 is making sense of your overeating. Number 3 is deciding what you are going to learn, what you're going to take away from it. Number 4 is deciding how you will use what you learn to help you move forward or to help you next time you're in the same situation. And number 5 is not letting your primal brain use overeating opportunities as a reason to overeat. Okay, thank you for listening to today's podcast. I look forward to speaking to you again next week. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast and are ready to live a more intentional life, lose weight as a part of that journey, and create a relationship with food and yourself that you love, then I would be honoured to be your coach. There are 2 ways that you can work with me. You can join my monthly membership program, My One Life Academy, that gives you self-paced learning, supported by twice weekly live calls and a whole lot more. Or you can join the waiting list for my next 6-month Lose Weight, Live Life Group Coaching Mastermind Intensive. Go to www.thebestyou.coach/coaching to find out all the details.